Are we live? Brad's got the thumbs up.
Yeah, we are live.
Okay.
By the way, we're live.
By the way, we're live.
Yes.
Thank you, folks, for tuning in to.
If somebody's tuned in to all of them all day long,
Yep.
we owe them
God
something.
bless you.
We owe them something.
We owe you something.
There's got to be something, some kind of
Yeah,
giveaway.
giveaway or something.
There's got to be something.
And as equally important, this was the one we've been waiting on all day too, right?
Sir.
We have been waiting on you two guys and been thinking about this all day long.
Yes, the last one.
Yep,
It's the last one.
As I look at my schedule, it's the last one. We call this, Trey Sheriff.
Yeah, sorry about that.
And Rick Dunn for the day.
In training, this is what you're looking for, the last one of the day.
Me and Terry had a good laugh earlier because on the schedule they misspelled his name and it's like Treey, so it's Trey.
You got the last name right. Most of the time,
It's
two
the other way
R's,
around, right.
One F's, but that's good.
Mr. Sheriff.
We are fortunate enough to have on this particular episode and session with us Terry Sheriff, who is the chairman of our Training and Education Committee for the Firefighters Association, and one of the hidden talents that usually stays behind the screen, and Rick Dunn. We keep him behind the screen because most people are scared of him, and he runs the children off and things because
I agree.
he's very smart.
Nope.
And is very good at what he does, but he organizes our Fire Officer Academy and is a support for many of the training functions and instructor corps that we have at many of our events. So, Rick, we appreciate what you do, even though we give you a hard time about it to your face, and we'll continue to do so.
He keeps coming back.
Well, he's a glutton for punishment.
He is that. Yeah, so I guess we can jump right in. And what I want to talk about first is I'll start with Terry and talk about the process of how we build this training for the conference, how that's decided. And if somebody, and we'll start with how we decide who's here, and then how do you get here, But
Right.
and you can talk about some of the things that we have going on too.
Right. So the biggest thing is what we do each year. As everyone knows, we have an incoming president. So on Saturday night, when the change of command, the president comes in, the new president, he usually gives a speech of his goals, his vision. Not only that, but their letter of intent also includes. So we start a year and a half or two ahead of time to start planning and reaching out and kind of focusing on, okay, because what is the president looking for, right? So we try to go out. We also go to FDIC and seek out talent. As you've heard many times, we talk about local talent. We got tons of local talent in our state. So we ask for that. But the other thing is, so we kind of look at the president, his vision, his goals, tie them into the strategic plan of the association, and try to bring training and classes and different topics for all of our members, whether it's a large department, paid department, career department, or if it's just a small volunteer department where I first started, right? So you try to make sure we're getting all the training for all our firefighters. And then we look at, okay, what's either the next best thing, what's the next topic we need to bring in. So we're kind of being proactive and bringing in different topics. One to bring in mind is EVs, right? So we've been kind of working on this for the last several years of how can we prepare and give training to our firefighters so when they are faced with this call that they already have some basic knowledge. And we all know, not to go down that rabbit hole, is we still don't know what to do with EVs. But we do that, and then we open it up for call for presenters. They go to the website, put in their information, topics. We have some that will put in 1 or 2 classes, then some that may put in 5 or 6. And then we take that, and every October, the Training and Education Committee will sit down, review, and then make sure that as we planning for fire rescue, this is, October of year before, and then we'll go through the reviews and see if we can make sure that we're getting the best training, the variety of training, and also too that we're doing the visions and goals of the association and also the president.
Well, I'm gonna tell y'all, I got a bad chair over here because I feel like I'm sitting like on a cooler box. I feel littler than everybody over here. This is ridiculous.
You may sit on the floor.
Yeah, this is ridiculous.
You need a box?
Yeah, I'm in the box on a box. But yeah, and that's some of the things that I knew you would touch on because I've been involved for a long time. That I think that a lot of people think that we start planning this thing in May. We're gonna put this together. We're gonna bring these instructors in.
Right.
But it's a 2-year process. And Rick, you've been still heavily involved in trying to schedule these instructors, and you got to get them way out. If you could just talk about some of the process of bringing in, because right now, we're at fire rescue and we're talking about fire and rescue, but we're providing training year round at and you don't want to duplicate, do the same thing over again, and we're trying to bring people in to draw people in. So if you just could talk a little bit about the scheduling and how that works.
Yeah, in a sense, really meeting with the Training Education Committee, they provide really that feedback of this is really what we feel would fit best with our conference, both the culture of our conference and what we do here. Again, is what the president kind of their goals and what they set out as well. But again, looking at emerging trends. So when they provide me, and our system is kind of archaic at times. I give them a kind of a green, yellow, and red lights when they go through the 190 submissions that we have each year. Again, that starts the year before. So like right now for next year's conference, those submissions are open. They've been open since January. And so they'll roll on through until the end of September. And so once in October we meet, they provide me with that list, and then it's up to me to kind of fit. The executive committee they provide a budget. Like with anything, we have a budget, and so they provide a budget, and so we have to kind of fit the schedule. The schedule would be as typically for our conference as we do 4-hour classes on Wednesdays, our pre-conference, and then on Thursdays afternoons after opening ceremonies, we have a hour-and-a-half block in there of classes, and then on Fridays it's all classes all day, 3 blocks. So we have a morning session, midday, and then an afternoon session. And then on Saturdays, we do 2 blocks there. So that gives us the flexibility of saying how many do we typically do, 6 to 8 classes within those blocks. And so it's mixing and matching those of saying we don't want competing 3 officer classes at the same time. We don't want 3 specialty classes like a rescue class or something like that at the same time. So it's mixing and matching them. So we have a wide variety of a cafeteria style that they can come pick. And so from there, we're looking at everything from their travel expenses. We're looking at everything from their honorarium if they choose that. And really from that, getting that information and then start reaching out to those instructors and try to come up with, what's best for our conference, how it fits within the budget, how it fits within the schedule, and kind of build that schedule. That then goes before really the T&E committee does that final approval. After I get done with it, goes to them, it goes to the executive committee. Once they do that, then I start doing contracts, teaching agreements with the instructors. But that all happens November. So, we've got the instructors for this year locked in last November.
Right.
And then every now and then we'll fill some holes throughout the year. There may be something that comes up, some new emerging trend or something. We'll fill a piece here and there. Instructor may drop in and out. We'll have that. Prime example was Monday evening. I got a notification, text, I think it was, from our EV instructor from Chicago, had a death in the family and couldn't make it. And so we weren't able to fill those slots. But most of the time, if I have an opening, 3-6 weeks out, I can find somebody to fill that. But it's a massive scheduling component to be able to do that.
Well, the takeaway from that for me, that whole thing is this, people make just this assumption, oh, hey, can I come down there and teach next week? And the complex process required to pull off filling up those rooms like you've done for the past couple of days ain't easy. It requires a lot of thought by a lot of people and a lot of work. The result being, like I say, that I think yesterday they said it was 560 students yesterday, and that was like Thursday. You fit all of that into opening ceremony and the big room stuff and what we did last night. And in mixed of that, we had 560 people in classes.
Yep.
And why? Because of everything you just said rehashed. It's not easy. It takes a lot of time and practice and planning.
Well, and there's a lot of strategy and tactics to it too, and you kind of hit on a little bit of where you don't want to saturate a topic.
Right.
So maybe you had 3 very, very good submittals, but you got to take the best out of that,
Right.
and then the other 2 just aren't for this year because I got other things I need to fill. So that's part of it, and then there's other great programs that don't fit this conference, and maybe better suited for fire improvement.
Right.
So that's part of it too. So not only are you trying to find the best topics to bring in the best people, you're trying to find the best fit for what we're trying to do and where we're doing it and what we have available.
There's one other piece that we don't think about a lot is there's a generational component to education.
Sure.
And we look at the fact of where our heroes,
Yep.
you know, and I look across, you know, this panel here, our heroes
Yep.
are still out there teaching.
Yep.
But that 20-something-year-old, they're not the heroes of them. So it's finding them, and that is getting harder and harder because it's not about, in our generation, it was the magazine that was laying in the firehouse that you could say that's the hot instructor. Now it's the podcast and those kind of things that are happening and the following that they have. So being in tune to what they're doing, because if we don't do that as an association, that younger generation will not be involved in this conference. And then it's just going to be a bunch of old guys with walkers walking around come to training.
So in earlier podcasts, we talked about kind of the transition of our attendance, where I think you're seeing younger guys, right? Mm-hmm. That have different interests than the older group, where everything was chief officer kind of stuff. But what those guys want or need necessarily doesn't fit this environment. So we have to find those specific programs that fit that, not age group, career group, where they fit in.
Correct.
To make sure that they get a good experience.
And
while not losing old guys like us.
Yep.
Right. About 2 years ago, I was looking around. It was about the second year that we was back at the beach and everything. And, you know, we joke about the flat bills, right? The young flat bills. But started looking around like, man, we have really reached the young generation. And then got it looking as like, we're the old guys now.
Happens,
you know?
happens fast.
Some are older than others, but
easy.
Happens.
but that's what the draw is. You know, we're trying to figure out, and we can see it in our own departments. You know, about succession planning, getting guys ready, the guys and gals ready for that next step. Is how can we be part of that as Fire Rescue Improvement Conference, the Officer Academy, so on and so forth. The quarterly training is to get that training to this younger generation. So when we do either move offline to administrative role or out of the administrative role to retirement, that we have developed that generation to continue the ultimate thing, take care of our citizens.
All right, so here's your opportunity to have your crystal ball, to have your wish list met, and to prepare for that next generation. What's coming down the road? What's the next thing to change this format, and in what we see here or what we are experiencing or the process which you have just described, where are we going for the future to ensure that's met, to ensure the other people are engaged, and to give everybody something fresh to see in the years to come? Go ahead and answer that. Hurry up. You got 30 seconds.
You got 30 seconds. Oh, on the hot plate right here, right? Well, I think, you know, you take all the generations that we've been in the fire service and you started watching the fire service is constantly getting more and more. No matter where you are, when someone calls a number and usually what's the answer to them? We'll call the fire department. So we have to make sure that we're staying on top of what's next thing, what's the next topic. When I came into the fire service is we started running hazmat calls. Now hazmat is kind of just okay, we run hazmat calls. And then the next thing was some of us running crashes. Then we started doing extrication, you know, more heavy extrication. So then we got rescues. So you got to prepare for the rescue. hurricanes and rain and floods. So we do flood boats,
So emerging trends.
merging trends, and then
Okay.
trying to stay just like we talked about earlier about EVs and everything. That's something that is a big push, but we don't know what.
Are emerging trends predictable, or do we just need to pay somebody to sit down and start watching podcasts? What's the answer? And again, I'm putting you on the spot, but I mean, how do we know what's coming next for us?
And I don't know if it's necessarily topics as much as the evolution of training. And because we look at the model we have here, we've already ahead of that curve somewhat, is because the transition that the association has done in the executive committee is really taking fire rescue and making this, the word I've heard a lot of times, is a trade show with classes in education. I mean, we're hosting 49 classes with 43 instructors from all over the country. I mean, that's an amazing thing. And we can have our national speakers come in and they said, this is the biggest thing we've ever seen at a state conference. This is something you see at a national event or more of a regional type or bigger event. But what's emerging on the type of training is you're starting to see, because of the communications through social media and things, you're starting to see more of that regional approach to training. The smaller organizations do those pop-ups, whether it's a group that's coming to a fire department and doing a hot training or hands-on training with some lecture stuff or whatever, whether it's your unions or your full groups or whatever those things are. So instead of being against that, we embrace that in a sense. So really, several years ago with our transition, what we've done with this conference is we took our January Fire Service Improvement Conference, made that a hands-on conference that is really catering to that younger generation. That's what they want. And we're focusing that so much on that younger generation where it's those line level skills that they were going to get through that training that's above and beyond their initial certification stuff. So I'm going to go get a firefighter 2 class, but I'm going to now do the specialty engine class or truck class or search or RID or whatever those things are, that's taking them to those next levels.
One of the big.
Can I add on to that?
You may add away.
Just your question was, do we have to have somebody watching these trends, or is it predictable? I think it's absolutely predictable, because what we've done with the flat bill generation is they have become very involved in regional, state, national training. Mm-hmm. I think what we did was we brought in a group at a younger age to be involved in training outside of your fire department, mm-hmm. right? So you're going places to get it. Yep. So the predictable part of this is those guys are going to need to be trained to be managers and leaders. So at some point, somebody's got to develop flat bill leadership, because that group's coming up, and they're going to transition from those guys that are forcing doors and pulling hoses to they're stepping out, and now I'm an officer and I'm in charge and I got different responsibilities. But now we got the hook set, so I think that will continue to grow, because they won't be flat billers forever.
I like that. That's a good call. Sure.
And
the other thing, your work's cut out for you. There you go.
Exactly. Well, the other thing is one side we hadn't talked about is evaluations. Like whether improvement conference or here, is we request feedback evaluations, and we try to make it, because we all know our attention span is really short now. So how do we get a survey to get good quality survey? Because after fire rescue, after improvement conference, we take those evaluations, we look at it as a committee, we look at it to the executive committee too, and sit there and say, all right, if somebody talks about a topic or something, we make sure, because that way we're staying relevant and bringing in that training, because the ones that are spending the time, taking the training, providing feedback, we take that feedback and make sure that we bring that to them.
And Joe, so I got to answer one of your questions, so I'm going to fire a question back to you.
Lay it on me.
When we had Chief Klein on here, we were talking about the transition of this conference and what it turned into, because I think what we had prior to
right.
Where we're at, so let's go back 30 years, 37 years,
yep.
To where what you had then was a gathering of a business meeting.
Yep.
And that was kind of the deal.
That was it.
So the growth of training in your time, and where we're at, did you ever think that it would turn into that kind of training?
Yeah, we hoped, certainly did. I think that was the whole desire, and I think you saw it and will continue to see it made at an elevated pace. Business sessions, business meetings, meetings that are not about strategic, tactical, whatever improvement are just going to disappear.
Yep.
Nobody wants to waste their time. Send me an email. I don't want to hear it. And so I think that the future of this program is we're going to have to find other ways through our bylaws and constitution to do business of this association and inform membership and make decisions, because this program is going to need another 3, 4, 5 hour block to put on more classes, and maybe that afternoon slot on Thursday is the time for our tracks, and the time for these new things to be done. New forums, whether it's those breakouts like, hey, this is the electronics forum, this is technology forum, whatever the case may be, and do completely away with that business session part, because I think it's becoming for the next generation an absolute waste of time.
I think that's a fair assessment.
We've had a few classes. Everybody wants the cool classes of, how to do forcible entry, how to pump more water, things of that. Some of the classes we're having right now, and you talk about that trend, is we've obviously we've seen over the last few years mental health. So we're bringing more of those classes, and we're seeing it being, I don't know if the correct word is accepted, but maybe they're realizing there's issues out there, and how can we prepare ourselves to help our people. So we saw good attendance there, to where when we first brought it out maybe, 2-3 years ago, it was a trickle effect. But now people have, I'm lost out of word, not to say embrace, but they realize there's a need there, and we need to make sure we're taking care of our
Well, I'll say kudos
personnel.
to the association and everybody on training committee and everybody who's involved in putting classes together. When we first started putting together programs on mental health, we had low attendance.
Right.
But we felt so strongly about its importance that we kept having them. So if only 3 people showed up, 3 people showed up.
Correct.
And what we have seen over time is now they do get a lot more play, but the thought process could have been, oh, only 3 people coming, we need to take that off.
Stop.
No, it's too important. I don't care if 2 people show up, we're going to keep offering it.
It's no different than trying things like this, and I'm not trying to self-perpetuate here, but it's trying things like this. And okay, yeah, maybe right now today, the chances are, right now, there's not a whole lot of people watching us live.
3 or 4 people.
But
Yeah,
you're going to have a lot of people go back and watch this
Yeah.
thing at their convenience at some point in the near future. And there's the value in it. So how do you grade, how do you assess value to something that's not going to give you the traditional seat field, but will give you return on investment? And I think that's a different way of measuring it that you've got to get used to, get ready for.
You act like it's the first time you've been on a mic.
And
I know,
all
it
right.
is.
And so here we go, Rick Dunn. Here's mine, though, is that Rick, you and another very talented member of our staff, who you can tell about, have kind of now on year 3 or 4, I believe it is, on the fire rescue app. And I think that is an example of transitioning to something that's probably new technology, because I can't tell you the number of people that right now, Micah, and others are walking around with their phones in their hands, looking right now at their phones, and we have to meet that technological expectation too, and I think you've done that to a degree with the app. It gives us speaker information. It gives you, and we'll talk about getting certificates, because I think that's another component. So tee up, Rick, tell us a little bit about app side.
I mean, really with the app, we tried it 3 years ago, I guess, really was an internal document that we use both for our vendors as well as for our staff to kind of test it. But now we've expanded it last year, where issuance of certificates, speaker information, checking in, checking out of classes, even connecting with CEUs was all kind of competed with the app. On the back end of it, it's just a matter of getting the information in there, getting everybody checked in. The app and the database is a little bit of a challenge, and Brooke does an incredible job with that. Brooke Dennis, our communications coordinator with the association, and so she's working with Brick and his team, get that information in, get the app loaded up, and to be able to do that. And so check-in has become so much smoother, because they're going in, they're putting their email address in, they're checking that information, and it also gives us a cross-reference back because as we always, this is me, I got to be careful when I say things like this. I hide my association logo. Is the fact of our members, unless they need something, sometimes they don't really check their information. But when they need something like getting in this conference, they're going to fix something. And so it fixes our database. And as they do that, and so the app has given us that opportunity to do that. Now, some of the people coming up with cameras are amazed that I'm actually on a camera. That's why they're taking pictures of this, because I usually am not on a camera, because I avoid that. But the app has given us that opportunity for them to get their own certificates without us having to hand deliver those or print some basic things out. It's given that information, check in, check out of classes, speaker information, scheduling, all those kind of things. We had a room change. All it was go in the app, change one time, it changed instantly in the app instead of publish stuff that's out in a booklet or something else.
That's my example of future and how we're going to streamline and make this better, because older members will remember showing up to this conference and having to stand in long lines to get your badges, and being very frustrated because I've had to walk into this. There are members that still want printed material, even though they're dinosaurs. I'm giving them a hard time. Older members will remember, too, of having to go upstairs in this convention center and stand in long lines to vote for individuals, and that was a nightmarish scenario that was lose-lose. You weren't going to make people happy in that thing. So the challenge is how can we continue to find processes, opportunities where things can be modernized, mechanized, made electronic, and make the experience better, and quite frankly, take a lot of the cumbersome nature out of it. People are never going to stop walking around here because everybody wants to, you said, kick a tire.
That's right.
Everybody wants to kick a tire. But nobody wants to go through any kind of bureaucracy to be able to kick that tire.
That's right.
And how are we going to get the convention center to put up more electronics so that we can interface and make our messaging and labeling and scheduling more of theirs? But that's the cutting edge that I think training and education wise and experience wise, we talk about the experience as a whole, have got to try to find.
Right. And just this conference too is, unless you've been under a rock, AI. We're hosting several AI classes and technology classes to, and like Rick said, is who would have thought you come to a fire conference and you get EMT National Rescue credit, right? So there's tons of credit. What was it? Out of the 43 or 48 classes,
23, 24, somewhere in there, were approved for EMT training. Or CEUs
right.
for CEUs.
Right.
And then it makes it just, and those are the things is, as
and how
you
are
attend
those?
class.
Have some of those classes gone on? How are the participation in those programs?
Good.
Have you seen? Has it really been?
Yeah.
Good. I mean, I know that's premature to ask you the answer, but just
But that's what we started off with earlier is how do we continue to make sure that we doing the next set is how many departments now is a EMS based fire department?
Yeah. How over 50% of the EMTs in this state are fire-based.
Right. And what are we doing it for the most part? We're doing it for our citizens, right? Because we see that need. And we see that, and very blessed with executive committee, liaison with Rick, with the T&E committee, and we got young groups that understand what's coming next. And lack of a better word is sometimes when you're in administration, you don't like challenges, right? But they challenge you. They challenge to sit there and say, hey, this is the next thing. And then the challenge is sometimes, hey, Rick, this is what we want. You got to build the Lego set and then find somebody.
And then Rick says, no, this is what you wanted. Y'all thought y'all wanted this. You really wanted this.
Well, I want to share this before time's up, because I know Jamie just announced that we're closing in just a few minutes. I don't want to turn the lights out on us.
Absolutely.
But I want to segue to something you said earlier is about flat bill leadership. And so that kind of a segue into another piece that training education is involved in, but also the officer section involved in, that's the Officer Academy. And the Fire Officer Academy was built in 2021 as sort of an idea out of the Officer Academy with the help from the Training Education Committee. Because we had an idea and nothing more. We had no funding, but luckily Training Education had a little bit of funding that we were able to kind of tag into. And
Training's always got the money, right? That's
training
that's
has
where they
money,
get the
so we need money from training. So, but we were able to build the officer academy, and so far, and we've done 5 classes so far, twice a year, and it continues to grow and get better. And had 116 have actually graduated from that program now. And in fact, this evening at 6 o'clock, the group that is in town of the graduates are getting together and just having a beverage and a burger together and just having a good time, just a kind of a camaraderie kind of thing. So they continue to kind of stay connected, but as part of that program came out of really those innovations. But again, to me, the draw for that program it was those younger up-and-coming leaders needed something beyond that book, and that program gave them that. And now that they've been through that pride piece with that, now they're starting to get promoted beyond that company officer. We've got several who's been promoted through that program into assistant chiefs, battalion chiefs. Their captains in their organizations would be almost a battalion chief level in a bigger organization, and they're thriving in those levels and just doing good things. And so applications are for the next class which is in the fall, close June 30th, because there's not 31 days in June.
They aren't. Don't close it on 31st.
Not today. It's going to close on 30th. So get those applications in.
But the thing is, you keep asking is, and what we do is when we meet and have conversations, is we're never satisfied. I don't think the association is ever satisfied. It's like, all right, what's next? Mm-hmm. What is next? What's next? Is there gaps? Let's fill those gaps with that. The other day, I know President Arant, association, 120 years, right? Do you think the founding fathers or the people that put the thing together would ever, oh, this is what it was?
Sure.
Or what it could have been?
Sure.
I mean,
right.
If you break everything that the association does,
right,
and when it was first started, would they ever even dreamed?
Right.
So I think the leadership and keep asking, all right, what's next? How do we improve? What do we do next?
I would challenge too what you've said, and others can bear me out. I think that's what the expertise of this association has always been, is filling that gap, looking for that cutting edge, doing other things that other groups couldn't do. And that's what's made us successful, is we got people like the two of you that are sitting there trying to figure out what are those things that's nobody else doing, what are those things that we need to be doing. We're nimble, we're quick, we'll find the methodology to make it happen or the money to pull it together, because we got enough talented people. We'll go out and make this thing happen. So the challenge is to get brains like yourselves to say, hey, here's the hole, here's the problem, here's the need, and the rest of us jump in there and try to figure out how to make it happen.
And to me, it comes down to the fact, and I look at my friend Charles over here, who every conference he brings me his book and says, "What do I need to take?" And that's why I'm here. I mean, I could be retired on a rocking chair right now, but folks like my buddy here is the reason why I'm here, and the reason I keep doing what I'm doing is the reason why the hard work that goes into this conference and these classes, because. Again, as you know, I've been working with this group of instructors since November, really before that, because some of them just putting in. And so I kind of know their messaging. I know who they are as people, because I'm on the phone with them. I'm emailing back and forth. I'm getting to know them. And so I'm looking at my friend here, and I know he doesn't need to have some high-rise big city hotshot instructor. What he needs for his community, here's the best class for you. And so that's why I look at every individual member just like I do him. So he's always been my friend, and I'm always there for you, my brother. Yep. Thank you.
You guys do a great job. Thank you for what you do.
Absolutely.
It's a lot of work.
We appreciate the support, and
Yep.
and like you said, there's a lot of stuff in the background that people don't see.
Yeah.
And if you've never been part of training or anything like that, you just sometimes show up and you're like, man, this is great.
Yep.
But it takes months. It takes hours of planning, because we want it to be the best for our members and making sure that we're reaching each and every one of them.
Well, I think 50% of y'all are doing a good job.
50%.
Appreciate that. I appreciate you.
I forget.
We can debate on which one of you that is.
I wish I could remember who
Terry's
told
doing
me.
that.
There's eventually you'll get 100% approval, right? 50% while you're there,
Yeah.
50% when you leave.
Okay.
So eventually you'll get 100% support.
There you go.
Here's what I tell you. You both have 100% of my support. You're doing a great job. Thank you for what you do.
Well,
We appreciate
it.
y'all. Thank y'all.
Thank you
Good
so
job.
much.
Well, we'll be back, Will, tomorrow,
We'll back tomorrow bright and early at 9 a.m.
9 o'clock.
We're kicking it off with Carter Jones, so tune in.
Yep. See you guys in. Thanks for joining us.
Talking about the Founding Fathers.
Hey.
I think fathers.